What's up guys, Americana back here with another video. Investors waiting on Powell to cut rates to pump their bags might be in for a massive surprise. Yes, a rate cut could signal that we're entering some sort of exit pump style of phase, but the actual cut itself coming up in mid-September is what I believe to be a sell the news event. So let's get into the video. Alright guys, we are way more zoomed in than we typically are, but just to give you some context with what we're looking at here, we have Ethereum's price chart pulled up, right? We have 2017, 2018, and then trying to fight through in 2021. Obviously all this messy chop in and around the all-time high before we get expansion. And it's kind of, back in August, we said we're kind of getting into this phase where we could see new all-time high on Ethereum, but that is going to be expected to be hit with a lot of chop. It doesn't get really any easier as we break out, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video today. So now that you know why we were looking for chop and why we are, kind of in a similar phase to as what we're going to talk about in this video, let's kind of like drop down to a really lower time frame scale here. All right, so in orange, we have just the same fractal that I showed you on Ethereum. And as you can see, things are kind of lining up. If you're in my free Discord, if you're in the paid Discord, if you are kind of really anywhere where you've seen me talking about things or if you've asked questions, I've kind of said that I don't expect any major new lows to be set on Ethereum, but rather we just kind of chop sideways until we can actually get some sort of expansion, right? And that's going to be marked with like Bitcoin actually holding up, Bitcoin being more stable, things like that. But until then, we're just waiting, right? We actually, did have this low kind of hold in here, which like I said, I don't expect this low at 4,000 to get taken. If it does, it doesn't necessarily break anything until we start like really rolling over. But I'll cover in other videos why, I don't think things like Ethereum go through 4 years of price action to get back to the all-time high to then roll over. So this is going to be my base case with higher lows until we can actually get a breakout. But I mentioned in this video that a lot of people are focusing on Powell. A lot of people think Powell is going to pump their bags. A lot of people think the rate cut is going to come. And then we're just going to moon from there, right? It's the rate cut's going to come in just as was expected by the market, and we're just going to pump. But that's not how these things work, right? This move has been forecasted for the last month or so, okay? That Ethereum, or that we would get a rate cut from the Fed, okay? So the market is already pricing it in, which is why we saw, this appreciation. And that goes into what we're going to talk about in today's video, right? With, once we do get some expansion, what could this kind of time up with, right? And what I'm working on from a base case scenario, we're just going to have to chop around here until we get breakout, right? There's nothing to work off of. Obviously, we can see the structure play out, but just higher lows until we actually get a breakout. But what could this coincide with, right, is some sort of just massive appreciation in Ethereum, which again is going to be good for the altcoin markets. And if we look at, past cycles or previous cycles, even in different coins, even across different assets, anytime something has to take 4 years to work up back to a previous all-time high, again, you are going to see the chop. You're going to see the breakout. And what do you get next? Some sort of backtest before continuing much higher. What can this time up with within kind of the narrative that we have within September and looking forward? And just the biggest question everybody has right now is the actual, Fed meeting. I've mentioned in previous videos, it's likely going to be some sort of sell the news event because the market is already pricing in this action now. It's already pricing in lower rates currently. So kind of what I'm expecting, especially being at where we're at with Ethereum, is some sort of breakout into the meeting, whether it's, as soon as it gets cut, we roll over, as maybe we cut, in here, and then some bad economic data comes out and we roll over. I guarantee you people are going to get very scared in here as we actually go through this back test, as well as right here, most likely. But for the same reason that we kind of are saying that we're breaking out in here, because we're following the same kind of patterns and things that we see reaching back to 4-year resistance, we are not going to get bearish on some sort of back test. But all the traders, all the investors that, aped in here, and they're like, okay, it's okay because Powell's about to cut. And then he cuts and we get a little pullback, and then we pump, and they just get absolutely giga wrecked. When just having a little bit of forward looking and a little bit of frame of mind of like what kind of price action we see in and around these highs would go a long way, right? And this is deeper than just Ethereum. I don't want you guys to think, oh, well, he's looking at Ethereum's price. This doesn't affect me. I only hold Bitcoin, or I only do whatever. But I would expect, obviously we're looking at Ethereum because it's kind of the cleanest indicator of where price action is in the sense of what the altcoin market is looking to do, the fact that Bitcoin's looking to underperform, a lot of different things. Ethereum actually getting its breakout is going to lead to a ton of hype in the altcoin market. So it's natural that to, alleviate some of that hotness, some of that heat in the market, that we do get some sort of, pullback, especially to get Ethereum to backtest, to get Total 2 to backtest, to get a lot of these coins to backtest once they've actually broken out, when Ethereum breaks out. You guys have seen me mention it in other videos as well as short form videos is, you have to have a good understanding of where you're at within the cycle, right? Price action in here, price action down here is not going to be the same as, price action up here. But it's likely that, in and around here that we can see similar things kind of show up. It's likely at, bottoms like this that we see similar concepts show up. So you have to look at what price action you're seeing through a frame of reference of like where we're at within the cycle. And again, all throughout here, I've been signaling, hey, it's likely that we get some chop. It's likely that we see chop. And then once we got, up here, I'm like, all right, it's likely we're not going to be making new lower lows, right? It's likely that this chop is going to kind of accumulate vertically until we can kind of get a breakout. And that is what my thesis was for August. And I said we'd probably set new all-time highs on Ethereum, but close the month underneath, which ended up being the case. And now we are moving on to September, which again is the final phases to get into some of these coins. And don't let this event shake you out. Okay, it is likely, again, going to mark a sell the news event with what we're seeing, price action in and around all-time highs, what we've seen in past cycles, things like that. Do not get overly euphoric here. Anywhere in here, do not get overly euphoric. And do not get overly bearish in here or in here. I can already see how this stuff is going to play out. And from a technical perspective, I know it's such a freaking cliche to say it, but technically, this right here and this right here, this is kind of last dip moments in the market. If we're looking at, let's take this off log scale in here, right? These are kind of the last moments to get in the market before things get really silly, really euphoric. Sorry, you guys can't really see that. Really bullish, really crazy times. So that is what we are looking forward to in the month of September. But again, don't get caught up. Don't get caught up with if we do end up pumping into the Fed rally. I have other videos this week on, expecting September to be flat and things like that. Well, something like this, playing out does coincide with September being relatively flat. If we, pump the first half of September and dump the second half, and, we close the monthly candle, something like that from where we're opening. Today's the first month, so this is actually the monthly open. We have some sort of just small breakthrough, but this was the price action that made it up, these kind of two phases, then that kind of falls into what we're expecting with September still being flat. So I don't want you guys to think that, oh, well, he said September is going to be flat, this can't happen. He said this, everybody told me September was going to be bloody, this can't happen, right? Multiple things can be true, and it's a whole month worth of price action to play out. Like, a lot of things can happen. Let's look at last month. So August, this was August 1st in here. So we started the month with, a 5, 10, 15% dump. We rallied up. We almost got close. Ethereum's market cap made new all-time highs. Ethereum's price didn't. We pulled back. Ethereum's price made new all-time highs. Yeah, we're euphoric, and now everybody's sad again. So a lot of stuff can play out in a month. It's good to have an idea about how price action that you're looking at can kind of line up with narrative. So if the Fed meeting does come, we do end up pumping into it and we get a cut, we kind of know it's to be expected that it is some sort of sell the news event. So that one was a little bit of a ramble, a little bit of a rant, but it's very, very important to know, especially, when it comes to not getting too euphoric and not getting too bearish. Anyways, guys, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Make sure you check out my other videos for this week. I have a lot of good content coming out, a lot of stuff that is hopefully going to get you in the mindset of where we're going. This is the final phase. The top isn't in, what to expect in September, a whole bunch of good stuff to kind of start out the month, especially with some of the kind of negative price action we've been getting. Sentiment has been a little bit down in the dumps. Hopefully this can be a little bit more positive and something to look forward to. But I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.